Welcome to the Garage Gym Experiment podcast, where we dive deep into the home gym scene. Each week, we put out Sunday surveys where you tell us your thoughts on products, builds, and all things home gym related. We're here to break down the numbers and to talk shop. So thanks for listening, and let's get started. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Garage Gym Experiment podcast. In this week's episode, we have Jonathan, aka No Fate 24/7, on this two-parter. In the first episode, we'll chat about round 9 of Have You Heard of These Companies? And that survey that we took. In part 2, we'll do a deep dive into Jonathan's content creating and home gym experiences. So with that, Jake, take it away.
Thank you, Adam. So like Adam said, we are going to run over the numbers from the survey, which simply asked, have you heard of a list of 30 different companies? It's the 9th time that we've done this survey, and in general, there wasn't too many fluctuations. So we may be able to go through these relatively quick. And I'll just start from, I've broken this out into 4 different sections: above 90%, above 75%, and then a few more below that. But just to start off, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, you can see the screen, which just says percent of the yes vote, which is just saying, yes, I've heard of this company. So we have Rogue. And I should also say that we have, the last time this survey was done was about 6 months ago, in March. So you can see the change from March, and then also the change from the very first time we did this survey up on that screen if you are watching. So to start off, we have Rogue Fitness, 99%, Titan Fitness, 98%. We threw in Peloton this time just to see. We typically only do the strength equipment companies, but just wanted to throw that in there. Peloton, 97%. Rep is usually in number 3, but this time they're 4 with Peloton added at 96%. Alico, AbMat, Sorinex, Kabuki, and then also Frey Fitness above 90%. So the only other really large number you'll see on this screen is Frey Fitness, change from June 2019. They're up 185%. Kabuki and Sorinex are also up a decent amount too. Let me move on to the next slide, which is simply above 75% to 90%. So here we have Bells of Steel, American Barbell, PRX Performance, Fringe Sport, GatorX, Force USA, and then Elite FTS. So kind of the main companies you typically think of when you're building out a home gym outside of Rogue, Rep, and Titan, other than a few others on the front page. Few changes here. We've seen Force USA steadily rise each time. For example, they're up 377%. They started up around 16% a couple of years ago. So that's a big change. Bells of Steel at 88%, nearly double from when we first started answering these. Outside of that, it's pretty steady growth for each of these companies each time. Next up, between 40 and 70%. So the top of this list is the Strength Co. at 68%, Body Solid 64%, PowerTech at 50%, and rest on this list were between 40 and 48%. So a Bridge Built, Synergy Fitness. We added a few companies that don't necessarily outfit entire home gyms, but wanted to see them on this list. So with that, that was kind of the criteria. I guess it's kind of evolving, but we do have Clever Built, Surplus Strength on here with 44% and 43%. Gorilla Fitness out of Canada at 41%, and then Crandall Fitness is right around 40%. So the Strength Co was added about a year ago. They've risen tremendously and then are up 30% just since this last survey was done 6 months ago. And then lastly, under 40%, we have Stray Dog Strength at 36%, first time added to this list. iCell Fitness, 35%. Gymway USA, 34%, Bolt Fitness, 25%, and then Freedom Fitness Equipment at 22%. They were at 8% last time in March. So while they're at the bottom of the list, I still think that's probably a win for Ashton. So I will say, like, this list could go on forever. Like, we could simply have 60, 70 companies each time. but that's, you don't really like, nobody is going to want to sit. And it's I'm thankful enough that people answer 30 of these in a row. So sometimes we switch them in and out. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I will ask you guys, I just rambled all of those numbers off. Any surprises, companies that we definitely should have not left off, or et cetera? Any other feedback on this one?
I mean, I think it's obvious that Rogue is probably the leader of the pack in terms of like what people know in terms of name brand. My only concern with that is like, even though they know the name, are they buying from Rogue, or are they just buying from Titan because they're on a budget, or they just see the big price differential? I just out of curiosity, because I mean, just because you know the name doesn't mean you're buying the product.
Right. And we do have a survey as well that kind of aligns with this. And it's that where we basically ask, of most of these top companies, do you own anything from them? In reality, it's I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's one of those surveys we try and do every 6 months or so as well. So that will be coming up soon. It really is like Rogue is way at the top. They have, I don't want to say the number, but it's outrageous. It's like 60 something percent own something from Rogue. And then I want to say like Titan and Rep are in like the 30s. So it does correlate a little bit. And you're right. So like one thing that we usually write and at least the blog follow-up posts is just like, keep in mind, just because you've heard of a company does not mean that you would buy from them. So yeah, that's just something that probably should have mentioned at the beginning of going through these numbers.
Yeah, I was really interested to see the previous numbers from Bells of Steel. I just feel like they're coming out with a lot of affordable, like cool home gym equipment. And so to see them climb so much, I thought that was neat. They have like their functional towers, and they're coming out with more and more to add to their catalog. So they're making a nice little climb. And then you mentioned a few companies, like you can't outfit an entire gym with these. It was down, like Cleva, Surplus, great companies down there. Company that's like that, but hit the 90% was AbMat, right? They have similar products to like Cleva and those guys, but I mean, they're at 92% for people who have heard of them. So good for you, Dylan. Nice job, AbMat.
Yeah. AbMat's kind of at the top because of their one main product, the AbMat.
You're talking about the AbMat?
But yeah, AbMat has pretty much been up there at the top with the big ones as well. Since we've started adding them. I thought the most interesting ones were kind of the ones where we haven't asked about them before. So just kind of morphing this into a little bit more of a inclusive list, I would say. But, us three are really close to the companies and community, and we see these products all the time. But it's interesting that 44% and 43% have heard of Surplus Strength. Even Bridge Built at 48. Those are a little lower than I guess I would expect. Stray Dog at 36% was somewhat of a surprise as well. I thought they would be a little higher, just considering, the people that answering these questions are typically the most knowledgeable. But I guess it can be tough when you're asking them to name 30 companies.
Yeah. Do you see that as a positive or negative for those companies? Like, is there all those people that haven't even heard of you that you could explore that market? Or is it like, man, we've been trying to put our name out there and only this percentage of people say they've heard of us?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a positive and also a huge motivator to try and get your brand out to even more eyes. You have to keep in mind, first of all, these are niche products, so they might not want to be compared to Rogue or on the same list as somebody like Rogue, and understand that the average home gym owner might not buy from them. But, I think it's still cool to see and something to kind of aim at, try and get that number higher going forward.
Yeah, it's always good to have a target too. So if they're watching this video, they're like, okay, we're at 36%. They know that they have room to climb, and it just keeps, if they can see progress, I think that's good for them as a company.
I will say one thing that is cool is, and it kind of sucks, but just about every time I remove a company or a couple companies, they'll follow up and be like, oh, why didn't you ask about us this time? So I'm sure that'll happen, but it's kind of But yeah, so people do look at this and they're like, oh, why didn't they ask us? Or I usually get like, there are a few of these companies where the companies reached out and I was like, oh, I should probably add them last minute. So I did. Pretty cool.
And to follow up on what Jonathan said, just because you've heard of them doesn't mean you own something. I'm really excited to see the numbers for do you own something from Sorinex. Obviously, a huge company at like 91% people have heard of them. But man, how many home gym owners are buying Sorinex equipment? I mean, that's
Joe Rogan. That's about it.
Joe Rogan, Cam Hanes, and Adam Hensley bought a rack once upon a
Yeah.
time. So I don't know anyone else.
Yeah, I want to say it's like 7-8% range last time. So, but yeah, I'm excited to do that survey again next time just to see how that changed and how it compares to this. Because I will say, like, if you look at the last like 8 times we've asked about this, on average, everything is like going up. So if you like followed along with the pictures, you can see most of them are like up a lot or slightly from June of 2019. So people are like learning about these companies as you go. So for example, American Barbell's up 16%. They started up in the 80s probably and are just at the upper 80s. But in general, those are going up. Are they also adding equipment as much as they're learning more about these companies? But anyways, I think that is going to do it for the survey, unless you guys have anything else to add.
Quick thing on Bells of Steel. One of the things I like about this company is that like they're really personable on their social media. I don't know if you've followed them on their social media, but they do like live streams and stuff. And it's just, they come across as a company that really knows what they produce, where they are in the market, and what their customers are looking for. They don't try to like BS anyone on their equipment. And they're just pretty honest. I really appreciate that about Bells of Steel.
Yeah, and I'll add just from Bells of Steel, I would say like the last year or so, we've asked like who has had better product releases, Rogue or Rep. I would say the company that's came out with the most outside of those 2 companies recently is probably Bells of Steel. So they're also continually adding to their lineup and improving their products. So yeah, they could very well in a couple of years be in that upper 90s range with some of the other companies, Rogan, Titan, etc. All right.
Cool.